everybody, to the next episode of Cannabis Review. I'm delighted to be joined in this episode by Mike Crawford, who's the co-founder of the Young Jerks, who's a award-winning podcast based in Boston, Massachusetts. How you keeping today, Mike?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Owen.
Thank you very much for coming on. Do you maybe want to give everybody a quick little overview of your position in the industry and how you guys came to set up the Young Jerks?
Yeah, I've been around for like 20 plus years as an advocate for medical cannabis. I was an old athlete, wrestler, amateur wrestler, college wrestler, hurt my back, and I also had cancer. So I have like two uses I use medical cannabis for like 25 years now. Actually, more than that, 30 years, really. But I've been active for like probably about 25 years and did a lot with a local Normal chapter, NECANN Normal at that time. The Boston Freedom Rally booked their event for a number of years, 10 years. I was on their board, two-term president. It's a nonprofit for cannabis reform in Massachusetts. And we're the largest one on, pretty much on the East Coast for the event. And so I did that for a number of years, and then I got into podcasting. And the Young Jerks has been going for 9 years now. We used to do a studio show, but now we're doing a live StreamYard show, take phone calls, and we really have been covering, the show for the Young Jerks is really about representing communities and people that don't get a platform or are being ignored a lot of times by the larger media. And on this, cannabis workers has just risen to the top for us lately, just due to the fact that there's so much issues in cannabis. So that's really what we've been covering over the last year, and really what's been getting us like out there and known and in a lot of media. The last year it's funny because we used to do a lot of media for decrim, medical, legal, the initiatives. And then when everything passed, it was like the corporations were getting all the media, not us, the activists. But the last year, it just totally changed based on the worker issue, especially.
Very good. Yeah, you guys have definitely made a name for yourself for sure. The first topic I wanted to talk about was an overview of Massachusetts. Can you maybe give everybody a quick little review of what's the size of the market, what's the medical cannabis market look like in that state, and any pertinent information you think everybody would like to know?
I mean, we've had billions of sales on the adult use. Massachusetts, 2008, we did decriminalized cannabis. Like that was overnight, just amazing to see it happen. That was when I was involved in NECANN. And nobody here thought that could happen. Like we knew the poll numbers had changed. Like 10 years before, we wouldn't have won that initiative, but the people's mind had changed about it. We knew the poll numbers. We won that campaign 2-1, 65-35. That was the first one. And then 2012, we did a medical cannabis initiative and we won that one as well. So that changed the law to allow people to have medical cards to grow their own cannabis and also to buy from stores. Unfortunately, it didn't really give us a lot of options in terms of caregivers, and it was really large, big cannabis stores that opened with people that had a lot of money, millions of dollars. And that's when we did legalization 2016. And every single one of these initiatives was funded by Big Money Marijuana Policy Project, a national organization. So the locals, we were limited on, what actually, we wanted to be included in those initiatives. And one of the things that we did make sure that we added was the option for people to do the home cultivation. And that's become a big fight. So the best thing about Massachusetts is that we can grow 6 plants per person, 12 in a household. So if you have a home, a private residence, you can grow inside of it if you're a legal adult. And so that's great. But again, it's been mostly big cannabis. There's been strides with equity to allow smaller players into the market. It's starting to work, I believe, but there's still a lot of issues and there's a lot of bad investment in the cannabis space. So it's really hard for smaller players to open now and actually survive because they're competing against big companies that have they've overinvested And so, like, we look at Trulieve, who's leaving the state right now, they're closing down. We've been, on them. They're the largest cannabis company in Florida, the medical cannabis. They own that market, and they came to Massachusetts and they didn't do well. And they actually, one of their employees died on the job. We covered that extensively. And Trulieve, one of the largest companies, has decided to move out of Massachusetts, which is Massachusetts isn't big geography wise, but it's not too small. I mean, we got Western Mass too. Eastern part of the state is really built up, a lot of suburbs, and then you got the city of Boston. Even in central Mass, you got the city of Worcester. There's cities in Boston, all over Massachusetts. So we have an urban dense population especially in the eastern side of the state. And we've got about, what, I think 8 million people here, so there's a good population. But a large company like Truly pulled out, and now they're dumping all their product. They're dumping all their product at one maybe 25% of what they would normally price. So other companies are having a hard time competing with that, with companies going out of business and they're not the only ones. A lot of other companies too, large companies. So you have kind of an oversaturation at this point. Prices are dropping, which is good, but a lot of the product still sucks. Myself, I'm a medical patient. I have a medical cannabis card. In the state of Maine, they allow you to actually go up there. Any state resident from any state in the country can drive to Maine or fly into Maine and get served in their medical cannabis program. And why would I do that when Massachusetts is legal? Because their program is so much better. And the reason their program is better is because they allow thousands of smaller caregivers to open up there with little red tape, no millions of dollars. And so what you have is you have more like a farmer's market. You have better product, better service, better quality. I talk to the guy, who runs the business that I go to up there all the time. Like, I'm in direct contact with him all the time. You're not going to find that in a big dispensary chain in Massachusetts. So there's a big difference, I think, in what we're talking about when we talk about legalization. Massachusetts did not do it right, I feel like, except for the home grow. They're trying to correct it. They're trying to fix it now. And I think there's a great opportunity to actually fix it. But I think the bureaucracy and the invested interests make it very difficult to do so here.
Very interesting. And we see over here in Europe, this home grow might be getting allowed in a number of different countries to let's say, placate the activist side of the thing. Do you think it's viable for patients to be able to grow their own home? Do you see it being
Yes,
successful? Yeah.
yes, but it's limited. Especially like where I live in Massachusetts, they made the law so that you can only do it at a residence. You can't at your residence. So you can't rent out a space at a U-Haul or maybe a medical facility that wants to rent you space to grow. You can't do that. So most people in Massachusetts are either renters, they live in dorms, they live in government housing. So most landlords are not going to allow you to grow in your home. So you have to own your home. And even if you own a condo, a lot of times there's condo association rules against you too. So there's a lot of instances when, if you're living, especially in government housing, your elderly housing, those folks aren't generally allowed to grow in their homes. So it's limited. I'm going to say that. It does help a lot of people. I think it's definitely something that everyone should, have in any law that they pass, that you need a home grow. But I want to go beyond that, because that the mistake that we made in Massachusetts, we thought home grow was enough. It's not enough. What you really need is to allow everyone to open. If you're not licensing somebody within 6 months or less, that's what the state of Maine does. People want to get licensed from the medical market. They can get licensed usually in 30 days. Massachusetts, it takes 3 to 5 years. And during that 3 to 5 year period, you're paying for consultants. You have to actually rent or own the property that you're hoping in 3 to 5 years that the state and the city will allow you to actually open in. So the rents in Massachusetts are astronomical. So I know folks who have been spending $10,000, $20,000, $5,000, you name the amount, a month for 5 years. They're bankrupt and they're still not allowed to open, and they're going to close before they even get to open. This happens all the time in Massachusetts. So what you end up with is these big predatory corporations that have all the money, and they, have all the real estate, but they don't care about their workers. They don't care about the product. The quality sucks. And in cannabis, especially, this is a plant that needs love. It needs the smaller batches is better. So that's why I drive to Maine. The prices are almost comparable now in Maine and Massachusetts. But why do I go to Maine? Product is so much better. And you got to allow smaller folks to open. And I say, call it caregivers. That's what Maine did. They licensed thousands of caregivers first. They have 3,000. It's a small state up in Maine, 3,000 legal caregivers in the state of Maine. And Massachusetts, we might have a couple hundred corporations here, large corporations. That's the difference when you have, and then Maine, they did the 3,000 caregivers first, they licensed them first, and then 5 to 10 years later, they let the larger corporations in. In Massachusetts, we did the opposite. We said larger corporations first. And I think that's a mistake. And I think that every state, every nation has to consider that. When you're shutting out your local people, this is one of my friends lives in the city of Malden, Massachusetts. He's been trying to open in his city for years now. And now he's had to sue the city of Malden. And what did the city of Malden do? They decided to license out of state, out of town, larger, bigger players with more money. And that's what we see over and over again. And those folks don't care about the quality of the product. They don't care about the safety of their employees. So that's my advice is home grow and license everybody as quickly as possible.
Okay, very interesting. Next topic I wanted to get into was the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. How does this stack up? Like, we already talked to the director of Oklahoma's version of this, the director from Colorado's version. We know New York seemed to be the golden child with their acquired licenses and all this kind of stuff. How are the guys at the Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts stacking up on a nationwide level?
I don't think they're stacking up. Like, I don't think they can compete with Maine's medical cannabis program. I mean, that says it all. Maine, whoever designed that medical cannabis program in Maine, they deserve the award on the East Coast. And Massachusetts, it seems like they get a lot of praise. It's like, because they have created billions of dollars in revenue, but I feel like that's a drop in the bucket. We could have had so much more revenue if they had just licensed everybody. So I feel like Maine is leading their medical program, and Massachusetts is trying to catch up. That's how I feel. Unfortunately, a lot of states have looked at Massachusetts being one of the earliest and not looked at Maine. So a lot of states have modeled themselves after the Massachusetts model, which it's not working. Even the equity stuff, it doesn't work. Real equity is licensing everybody.
Yeah,
If
and
you
it's
give everyone an opportunity and it doesn't cost millions of dollars, that's equity. And how about, no taxation on people who are arrested too? Like, these are the equity proposals that I don't see that are very frustrating. I think that we should be rewarding the folks, like even myself. I'm a white guy, I was arrested. Why should I have to pay tax on adult use? Like, if you want to give equity, think of new ideas that touch more people than just a few rich folks who have the right demographics.
okay. So over in Ireland, we have a citizens' assembly happening at the moment that hopefully is going to come back with some positive recommendations for decriminalizing or even legalizing cannabis. So the top kind of three takeaways that we should be looking at are: small grow works better than large grow, open to everybody, and a limited time frame to apply for a license. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
No, I think that's it. And I think taxation too should be reasonable.
Yeah, well,
I don't think
we've
there's
learned that from
anything.
California.
Yeah, and I think that cutting in locals is a good idea, but don't, be very. One of the issues we had in Massachusetts is that the law was so ambiguous, and it was changed by the state leaders after we passed it, that there was a lot of questions about how much tax the local towns could actually take, and there's been a lot of lawsuits and fights about that too. So I would be very specific about taxation, and limit it. Don't give them something though. I think a local city or town should get something for opening. And Maine, I love what Maine does. That for medical cannabis, I go back to their medical cannabis program in Maine. There's no state tax on the medical, which, I don't think there should ever be tax on medical cannabis, but if you're going to do it like Maine does, because there's a small little local tax, little city tax. It's like less than 5% on the medical sale. So it kind of incentivizes the cities and towns to allow it and take the revenue.
Mike, it's been great talking to you. If only these were twice as long, these episodes. For everybody who hasn't checked out the Young Jerks yet, the YouTube link is below. You can catch them on Twitter at the Young Jerks as well. I highly recommend subscribing and following. These guys are at the forefront of the activism side of things in America. And I look forward to reading more of your content and listen to more of your content. And hopefully we can touch base within the next 6 to 12 months. And I've got some positive news from Ireland.
Awesome. I love it. I loved, Irish American, I guess, like, I don't know, fourth generation or something. So it's great to be on a podcast from Ireland. Thank you, Owen.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and hope we have some Irish products over in Boston, Massachusetts in the next 24 months.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Brilliant. Right, for now, thank you very much, Mike. It's much appreciated, and catch you in the next episode, everybody.